Welcome to the Thunder and Lightning Show. We have a show today on blind obedience. And, I do want to mention, and Brian was talking to me about Eric Salmons. He released a video about this topic, and we were talking about this like last year. Well, like a year and a half ago, actually. We talked about this a little bit. Actually, I think it was a 3-part series, from what I remember. But we talked about this pretty extensively.
A
But
year ago,
now,
yeah.
there's more information because it's becoming a popular topic. And so, Ryan, do you have anything to say on that?
Yeah. John, Brett and I and you often joke that we lead the Catholic media when we talk about a topic. It's maybe like a week or two before other people get around to talking about it. Last year, we talked about sola obediencia and this problem, and we kind of set it aside. It was a topic of discussion, but basically, since Traditionis Custodes, the topic is back on the shelves again. It's off the shelves and in people's hands. And we did a show about it briefly. We touched on it a few weeks ago. Now Eric Salmons did a show 2 weeks ago. It was titled "Rethinking the Papacy," which was basically about the sola obedientia question. And Peter Kwasniewski, the Quaz with a totally radical show yesterday on Remnant's channel, and it was about sola obediencia. Do we have to obey Pope Francis? I think was in All Things or whatever. So, hey, everybody's in this ball game. Captain Catholic says, obey your overlords.
Yeah,
Just
well, and
submit.
I think you might have heard people say, and I think Eric Salmons mentioned this, that we must obey superiors, or like I guess that would mean bishops. We must obey them in anything that is not sinful.
Wait a minute. I think you should obey in things even that are sinful, because that shows that you're willing to really, really obey, even if it offends God, and that's true obedience.
Well, that didn't work though, because it seems to be costing the Catholic Church a lot of money.
Oh, that's bad. Can't
Remember the
have that.
McCarrick scandal? Yeah.
Okay,
So
well, as long as it doesn't cost us money, we should still then. Okay, obey in all things, including sin, except if it costs us money. Okay, then don't do that. Do whatever it takes. Preserve money.
well, and a lot of people, a lot of like well-intentioned people are saying this, and I think it's become sort of a topic that a lot of people just repeat just because they've heard it a lot.
What's
And
that?
that you should obey your superiors in everything. It's not sinful.
Mm-hmm.
The that idea that bishops basically order you around, tell you what to do,
Why is it
and
just bishops? Because there's plenty of other authorities. There's like the police or whatever. But let me ask you this question. We said this at brunch on Sunday. I think it was there, and I said to somebody, or maybe it was in a comment, I don't know where this came from, but if the Pope tomorrow says everybody is not allowed to drink coffee for breakfast anymore, or maybe they have to drink coffee, okay, drinking coffee or not drinking coffee is not a sin. So if the
it's
Pope
not.
says, if the Pope
Yeah.
says either drink or don't drink coffee, are you going to do it? Does that do you have to obey because it's not a sin? Are you going to obey the Pope's edict to drink or not drink coffee? I don't remember.
Well, for me, I mean I'm a bad example because I don't drink coffee.
Then
So
what
I'd
if he
say
commands you to drink coffee? Are you going to
if he
submit and obey?
no.
Oh, disobedience! You're excommunicated. This is why we can't have nice things. This is why the Pope had to issue Traditionis Custodes, because you won't submit and obey and drink coffee when you're told.
Yeah.
It's not a sin. Why won't you drink coffee?
Well, because he's trying to waste my money.
Oh, so again, there you go. It's all about money. See, if it
Yeah.
costs you money, then it's bad.
I'm sorry, Pope Francis, but I'm just not a fan. And I know that we would look at those lobbyists and say, hey, you're from South America, and isn't that where a lot of the world's coffee comes from?
Oh, yeah. So
Hmm.
it's the the caffeine industrial complex. It's a conspiracy.
Yeah. Yeah, a similar example I thought about was if your bishop told you, he said, under obedience, I command you to switch your bank to Bank of America.
Hmm.
And you're like, well, I have a better rate at my current bank, so no, I'm not going to do that. Like, but it's just, it's, we're looking at things that are irrelevant and to the bishop and the pope's, status or whatever. Like,
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Doesn't Vatican I say that the Pope is the superest, duperest, highest, most infallible, supreme of all pontiffs, and has the super duperest, highest authority? Shouldn't you listen to him if he tells you to switch your bank to TD, whatever it is, or I don't know, Bank of
Chase.
America, Chase? Yes.
Well, I don't think it hurts to listen, but
Hmm.
obedience is taking it to the next
Listening
level.
doesn't matter. You just obey and submit. That's the way of Islam. I mean, Vatican II Catholicism. So you better get with the program.
Yeah, yeah, not just because it's in Islam doesn't make it right.
Well, that's a crime against ecumenism right there.
Yeah, I
Blasphemy against
know.
ecumenism. See, this pure obedience is bringing us closer to our Islamic brothers and sisters, okay? Where it's just the will of God, the will of Allah, and you have to
Wow.
submit. So that's what this is all about. It's preparing us. You've seen Bergoglio with that three faiths thing over there in Abu Dhabi, the
Yeah.
complex of harmony, whatever it's called. They're just preparing you for that. It's going to start out with three of those temples, and then Bergoglio is going to like command everybody. Okay, only one temple, and he'll set himself up. He'll set himself up in there and say, "Worship me." That's what That's okay. Maybe that's not. I hope that's not what's coming, but it's dangerously close.
Yeah, I don't know. I wanted to actually do a show, like a solo show on that that three-headed temple.
A
Um,
three-headed monster.
yeah, yeah. I'll do that at some point. So stay tuned. It's an interesting one. It's pretty
Well,
cool.
you
It's
you mentioned something interesting there, and you said something like, "Well, wait a minute. That's how did you describe that?" The Pope commanding you to switch banks, or the bishop, and you were saying like, "Well, wait a minute. That's a little bit out of line." Is that how
yeah.
you said it? Okay, yeah, we'll get to that, and that's here in the notes that I've prepared here. So let me get started here. Before I even wrote anything down, I started to read the Summa last night. And by the way, can you put up Captain Catholic 706, his comment? We are not, this is a question, are we not supposed to obey evil men or those who go against Catholic teaching, correct? Yes. This may come as a news flash to people, but yeah, evil men or those who go against Catholic teaching. Well, yes, certainly the latter, but actually the one about obeying evil men, um, uh, yeah, you're still supposed to obey evil men, even if they're bad men, if they're commanding you in their competency, and we'll get to that, okay? But the first notes that I made here was I said, there's a lot of people in the church these days, the Max Beanses, the people over at Crocs, and where is Pachamama? I mean, where is Peter? And they're out there saying, "Oh, you have to submit all this stuff. The church, you need to listen." And I was thinking about this that how come are a lot of things that are actually required that Catholics do that are binding on sin, that are even dogmatic, and nobody really cares about them. Um, for instance, how about the canon law that says Friday penance is mandatory? There's one that's binding under sin, and nobody
Yeah.
seems to care about that nobody does it. Where's the submission and obedience and all this stuff to the canon law? I mean, that's a canon law that goes back to the apostolic times, but
Well,
nobody cares.
You know what's funny? Sorry for the side note, but I had a dream that I ate meat on a Friday, and I was like so upset about it.
Wow, I hope you
And then I woke up
confessed
and
when you woke up.
I'm like, oh, okay, good. It was just a dream.
I could tell you're not. If you were scrupulous, if you were truly scrupulous, you would have confessed that sin before you
well,
went and received Holy Communion.
well, I haven't been to confession yet. I want to go soon, so.
Ever? Wow, it's been a long time, huh?
Well, no, I just didn't have a chance last week, and I need to do that for
Oh,
the.
since the dream. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I wanted to go so that I could get. Isn't there like an indulgence you can get if you pray at a cemetery
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
for All Saints and All Souls Day?
Yep.
Yeah, so I need to do that this weekend and stop by the
Yeah,
cemetery.
this
But
is for
anyway,
Saturday.
yeah.
Here's another binding thing that nobody does. They've made it optional, and they even forbid it sometimes. Is Vatican II? If you believe in Vatican II, Vatican II said everybody needs to know the mass parts in Latin. They need to be able to say or sing their parts in Latin. That's mandatory in Vatican II. Does anybody care about that?
No.
No. Uh,
Well, so there's a few people, but they're like the Vatican II wasn't
the Adoramus
intended or
hymnal.
implemented as intended crowd. So
Yeah, and I don't know how many of those people are left who would even say they should know mass parts in Latin, but haven't switched over to the traditional Latin mass. There's not too many of those. Now let's look at these optional things that are now made dogmatic and binding. For instance, luminous mysteries. Oh boy, if you don't pray the luminous mysteries, then you're a sedevacantist. They're divinely inspired. There was like the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and the Luminous Mysteries makes it five. And another one is the Divine Mercy devotion. So if you don't believe in that diary and Sister Faustina and the chaplet and all that, if you don't pray that chaplet, then you're outside the church. You basically are a Protestant. Luther Part 2. Of course, that's really, again, anybody that tells you you're a Protestant or Luther, you should say, well, that qualifies me for a meeting with Bergoglio. I should have a seat of honor in the Vatican at the table at Santa Marta.
yeah,
Did you see they drug out that red Luther statue again in the Vatican? Put it
yeah.
up.
What did Taylor Marshall talk
Yeah,
about
it looks
that?
like Mrs. Butterworth or something like that. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't put it in any kind of heat because it looks like it would just melt right
Looks like it's
away.
made out of cheap plastic or wax or something. Why is it red? Because it's the color of the devil? I don't know. Um,
Well, that would make sense.
so on Sunday, when I saw you and some other guys, I asked them, I said, hey, you know, the three theological virtues and the four cardinal virtues. And then we named them, and I'll tell them everybody. The three theological virtues are faith, hope, and charity. And the four cardinal virtues are prudence, justice, fortitude, and temperance. And I said, where's obedience fall under all those virtues? And you were guessing and you didn't get it right, and then there was two other guys that were guessing like crazy. We got down to the last one before the other fella, who shall remain nameless, he guessed finally that it was justice. Like a lot of people were saying, oh, it's faith, oh, it's charity, oh, it's prudence.
Yeah,
No.
prudence was my guess.
Yeah, no, it's
And I
under
was like, wait,
justice.
what? Which one didn't I get? I was like, which one didn't I
Which
guess?
one didn't I guess? Yeah, there's only one left. Uh, so obedience is a child of justice, and this is all everything here is according to the Summa. So obedience is a child of justice. Justice is giving each what he is due. Under justice, there's many daughters there, three of which are religion, which is where you give God his due; obedience, which is where you give a human superior their due; piety, which is where you give your parents their due. And interestingly, Father Ripperger says that ecclesial traditions are part of piety. That is the form of Mass. I didn't see that in St. Thomas, so maybe, well, I didn't see that in the Summa as I searched for it. Maybe he talks about that elsewhere, or other theologians have developed that, like St. Robert Bellarmine or Suarez or somebody like that. Now, here's something interesting. This is in the second part of the Summa, question 101, article 4, about piety, and this relates religion and piety. And he says, St. Thomas says in an answer, he says, religion and piety are two virtues. Pay attention to this. Now, no virtue is opposed to another virtue, since according to the philosopher in his book on the categories, good is not opposed to good. Therefore, it is impossible that religion and piety mutually hinder one another, so that the act of one can be excluded by the act of the other. Keep that in mind. That's very useful, because what we're going to see is there's going to be a lot of people who will set one obedience at opposition with other virtues, and they're going to try to tell you that obedience trumps obedience uber alles over all this stuff, as it's the highest virtue again. And it was one of the things where, like Christ in the Sermon on the Mount, it was one verse: blessed are the obedient, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. He didn't say that. I mean, he did say like meek and hard or whatever it is. But yeah, I mean, you're going to be hard pressed to find obedience there in the New Testament. So anyway, this is what I wanted to bring up there, just as a precursor before we get into what St. Thomas says about obedience. No virtue can be opposed to another virtue. If you see that, then you have an excess or defect of one of those virtues, which means that one of them is a vice. So now let's go and hear what he says, St. Thomas says in the Summa about obedience. This is question 104, article 5, a secunda secundae on obedience. And I'm just summarizing it here. St. Thomas says, on the contrary, it is written in Acts 5:29, we ought to obey God rather than man. Now, sometimes the things commanded by a superior are against God. Therefore, superiors are not to be obeyed in all things. So therefore, there's the hierarchy. God must be obeyed above the dictates of a superior. St. Thomas continues, secondly, the subject is not bound to obey his superior if the latter command him to do something wherein he is not subject to him. Ta-da! This is why the Pope can't condemn you to change banks or to drink coffee, because his authority is only over protecting, guarding, and teaching the Catholic faith, and not over your preferences for taste or your business practices that don't touch on faith and morals. I mean, if, let's say, the Pope really cared about usury and he found out that Bank A was engaged in usury but B wasn't, then the Pope could say, wait a minute, nobody should be doing business with A because they're doing usury. So he's not going to say go do business with B, but he would say banks like A, you can't have any business with because they're engaged in usury. So again, we're talking about subject not bound to obey his superior if the superior commands him to do something wherein he is not subject to him. So stay in your own lane. The military general can't command his soldiers to go like wear frilly underwear or something. The guy at McDonald's, resident Brandon, can't make you get the jab. Okay, that's another thing that's way out of his league. Actually, nobody can make you get the jab. Nobody.
Wait, not even the Pope?
No, the Pope can't. That may shock you. The Pope cannot make you get the jab. You may be shocked at that.
Not even the bishops?
No, you might be shocked.
So
wipe the sweat off your forehead. It's crazy to say, but it's not. We're not subject to them when it comes to our health and our body.
Well, this is a new thing for the viewers. This is a shocker from the Thunder and Lightning show.
We might. Who knows? Are we going to have unsubscribes? Will we have subscribes? Will we get reported to Resident Brandon or the secret police?
I don't know, but someone will have to tell Bishop Stowe.
Mm-hmm.
And that guy in Newfoundland and Labrador, the Bishop of Newfoundland and Labrador. We'll see. I
Yeah,
mean, someone's got to tell them.
somebody's got to tell 'em. Okay,
Yeah,
so back to St. Thomas. I got a lot of Brandon comments here in the comment box. We'll
yeah.
get to those. St. Thomas continuing. Secondly, a subject is, I just read that. Continuing St. Thomas. But in matters concerning the disposal of actions and human affairs, a subject is bound to obey his superior within the sphere of his authority. For instance, a soldier must obey his general in matters relating to war, a servant his master in matters touching the execution of his duties as a servant, a son his father in matters relating to the conduct of his life and the care of the household, and so forth. So there you go. In your lane, you can command obedience. At work, if your boss tells you, I need those TPS reports, okay, great, I'll do the TPS reports, but really nothing else. Not like, hey, I want you to watch this show tomorrow night and tell me what you think about it. No. St. Thomas, this is his reply to objection 3 in that article. He's talking about religious, monks, nuns, friars, etc., sisters. Religious profess obedience as to the regular mode of life, in respect of which they are subject to their superiors, wherefore they are bound to obey in those matters only which may belong to the regular mode of life, and this obedience suffices for salvation. So what this means is that look at this, your religious superiors cannot command you to get the jab. That's not under the. You might vow obedience to your religious superiors, but they cannot command you to get the jab,
Wow.
because it's not. It does not belong to the regular mode of life. Um, the superior. I mean, you could think of some other health actions there, or voting. I mean, if you believe in voting, today's election day, and some of my friends don't believe in voting. And the superior can't command you to go and vote for Resident Brandon or Hillary or anybody else, or even Trump, or, I don't know, Franco or Mussolini or whatever. The superior can't force you to go vote for somebody, because that doesn't have anything to do with your regular way of life. Anyway, continuing. Uh, St. Thomas says, they're bound to obey only in those matters which may belong to the regular mode of life, and this obedience suffices for salvation. If they be willing to obey even in other matters, this will belong to the superabundance of perfection, provided, however, such things be not contrary to God or to the rule they profess, for obedience in this case would be unlawful. So there we go to into this. Believe it or not, you may be shocked to find out that a religious superior could command something contrary to the law of God. Oh, oh, how is this
Really?
possible? You mean
Well,
that men are not angels? Is
if
that
you can,
Did
I
you
mean,
believe that, John? Men are
if you,
not angels?
I mean, if any of the viewers of this program, that's going to be pretty obvious to any of
Mm-hmm.
them.
So
If you've
yeah,
been,
a religious
yeah,
superior could command you to do things contrary to the law of God, the natural law, or the holy rule. So, for instance, you've seen, what's the controversy having to do with the nuns in Fairfield? It's that these cronies, the inquisitors, are coming in there trying to get them to stop obeying the holy rule of Saint Teresa of Avila. So no inquisitor can tell you, oh, you can't obey the rule of Saint Teresa of Avila. It's already been approved, and you're vowed to it. So under obedience, I'm not obliged to obey you saying, like, oh yeah, you need to tear down the wall of the cloister, go out there and get on the internet, have friends come over, get your hair and nails done, hike up your skirts, put on
well,
makeup.
ditch the habits and put on just regular clothes and interact with the community, because
Yeah,
that's been so successful for the last 50 years.
it's working great. Do you see how many vocations there are in the lapel pin pantsuit nun orders? They're bursting at the seams everywhere you go. There's lapel pin nuns everywhere. Uh, Continuing, accordingly, St. Thomas says, accordingly, we may distinguish a threefold obedience. One, sufficient for salvation, consisting in obeying when one is bound to obey, which we discussed. Second, perfect obedience, which obeys in all things lawful. Now, this gets into the problem because obeys in all things lawful. See, you're not required to quit drinking coffee if the Pope says quit drinking coffee. But if you really want to be if you're religious, okay, and you're saying, not my will, but thine be done, and this is not sinful, then you can go ahead and do that. The problem in the modern church becomes that there's a fine line between obeying the command, um, don't drink coffee, and don't pray the rosary. There's a very fine line with that because the coffee thing isn't going to affect your salvation. The rosary thing is getting dangerous because they can change the faith on you or change it very slightly, and you start going down a trajectory which leads to doom. And this is what happened with a lot of these religious orders. They said, okay, we're going to change the habit. Okay, well, that's not against the law of God. And if I have perfect obedience, then I'll change the habit. Then they said, tear down, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. So they tore down the cloister. And then they said, okay, get rid of the veil. And well, I guess that's not a sin. Let's get rid of the veil. And then they said, let's hang out with guys, like go on dates or whatever, not calling them dates. And then anyway, people just, the women leave, they get married, they turn into lesbianese, whatever happens. But it's gradual. It's gradual decay.
Yeah, and that's actually a really good point because not praying the rosary is not sinful.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like but it doesn't. If they say let's ditch the rosary, then you can see it's kind of problematic. I mean,
yeah. and you know, they did this with the divine office. They said, okay, we're going to trim down to make it easier to pray. Well, they trimmed it down to the liturgy of the minutes, and instead of the religious praying that, you know, for a few hours each day, they literally just pray for minutes, and then they go watch TV. They do advocacy for anti-war, feminism, against nuclear weapons, you know, just silly stuff like this, death penalty.
Well, but they're running their Twitter ministries, though.
Oh yeah, like
you see that one? You see that one Twitter priest dressed up as Wario from Mario for Halloween?
Which was it, Father Matthew Schneider? Because he's the only Twitter priest I know.
He actually wears a cassock, I believe. I don't think he would do that. He's more of a virus priest, but no, this other one is a virus priest too. It's Father Stephen Basil, I believe, from Alabama. He's he's a very big virus priest because he was encouraging everyone to get jabbed, and he like basically that was his response to everyone in his like manifesto of jabs or something. Because he was basically saying how it's a sin not to get jabbed, and then but then his profile picture is him with like video games, like video game posters in the background.
Like, I believe in one jab.
I mean, it's like, oh, let's be a cool priest, you know. And I think that effort has failed miserably because some of the like, there's a few older people that are like, oh, he's so funny, and you know, but then everyone else, like the youth, are like repulsed by that, and they're like, well, okay, this priest is trying to be cool, but you know who's really cool is this other person who's just going to give us alcohol, you know, because you're going to find people like that. And they don't think you're cool.
They see that priest as a fake. Like, are you a priest, or are you trying to be the cool parent or whatever?
Because it's like this isn't even a fun life because you can do all that stuff if you're married, you know, and but then what's the whole point? Because you have to work on the weekends if you're a priest, you know. I mean, seriously though, it's kind of like the perspective there. So, but yeah, dressing up for Halloween. I mean, I don't know. I have like some funny stuff. I have some nice hats and everything, but is at a certain point, especially if you're a priest, don't you take yourself a little more seriously? I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, Saint Thomas threefold obedience. There's the obeying when one is bound to obey, what he calls perfect obedience when one obeys in all things lawful, and the third is indiscreet obedience, which obeys even in matters unlawful. And that would be a lot of this stuff that got us into this abuse crisis, where people say like, "Oh, don't call the cops about Father X and his touchings. Don't tell anybody that Father X stole." Because we don't want anybody to know. It could make us look bad. Father X touched, and so the bishop ships him off to someplace else and doesn't tell anybody. McCarrick's basically blackmailing these guys. If you want to be ordained, then you need to sleep in this bed. Or that guy in Cleveland,
Yeah.
come skinny dipping with me, and then I'll make sure you get ordained. So
Well,
they're obeying in this stuff just to go along, to get whatever it is that they want.
yeah, and it's like coercion. It's
Yeah.
more of like you won't get ordained if you don't do this,
Yeah.
basically. Like, well, and they don't even say it outright. It's just
Well,
kind of implied.
Salmon's mentioned this. It was in the show about the superiors abusing obedience. That was the most recent Salmon show before the one that dropped today about secession. But this brings us to this point. You can see here, I think that the most of this controversy we're talking about, obedience, disobedience, is not actually about obedience itself, but about the thing that's being commanded. So in this case, we have to consider the thing commanded, the act, as a human act. And St. Thomas says that to make something a human act, we have the object, which is the thing that you do, the intention, which is why you do it, and the circumstances, which are the surroundings of the act that may change any outcome or whatever. And keep in mind that if there's any defect in any of those three parts of the act, then the act becomes a moral evil. Okay, so in every one of these things, it's a superior commands, whether it's the drink coffee or whether it's the cover up touching. Then you have to examine what he's asking you to do: an object, intention, and circumstance. And then, of course, then you have to examine, well, he gave the command, but then how do I carry that out? And I have to weigh all this stuff. So you get into there's a lot of judgment here. And so you have to follow your conscience. Nobody can, force you. So your judgment is your own. Actually, so when we're talking about obedience, that's a human act. That judgment to obey or disobey is your own. Your own conscience must inform whether you answer yes or no to this obedience, and that's formed by weighing the object, intention, and circumstances. So let's talk about then when we get to the question of ecclesial obedience, then we have to make a distinction, and it's a very big one. Everybody needs to listen to this carefully. Obedience has nothing to do with supernatural faith. I'll repeat it again. Obedience has nothing to do with supernatural faith, which comes from God and is given to us through the infallible magisterium, scripture, tradition, and the consistent and perennial magisterium. So that's like there's 4 gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Abortion is a grave evil, everywhere, intrinsic evil. That there's 7 sacraments, and the Eucharist is one of them, and it's body, blood, soul, and divinity. That has nothing to do with obedience. You accept that on faith. That's not coming from a human superior. That comes from Christ himself through, the scripture, tradition, and the perennial magisterium. So crimes against faith are heresy, apostasy, and blasphemy. And so things relating to the faith that we're talking about, dogma, and then crimes against dogma, are heresy. So that's infallible teaching. You contradict it, that's heresy. But crimes against obedience, We're talking about these are fallible decisions of governance. And the worst you could do against that would be a schism. But even at that, I think it's more than just a pure disobedience, because schism is not disobedience whatsoever. Schism is an absolute rejection of the authority of the church, and that's something far different than rejecting one decision of a human superior. So they're two totally different things.
Wait, so you're saying that the SSPX don't qualify as being schismatic?
Well, we'll get back to that. I don't want to get into the concretes because I'm almost
Okay.
done.
All
But
right.
we'll get back to that.
All right.
I only have 2 or 3 more things here. For instance, here's the faith, things relating to faith. Council of Trent fixed a form of the sacraments specifically to combat Protestant errors, so there's no more ambiguities about what is a sacrament, what does it do, etc., etc. And then now I'm getting towards the end of my notes here. Schism, by the way, is one of the sins against charity, not against justice. All right, and not against faith. All right, charity. Why? Because it separates Christians from each other. St. Thomas says the head of the church is Christ himself, whose vice regent in the church is the sovereign pontiff. Wherefore, schismatics are those who refuse to submit to the sovereign pontiff and to hold communion with those members of the church who acknowledge his supremacy. Now, the $10 million question is, what does it mean to submit to the sovereign pontiff? And unfortunately, St. Thomas Aquinas never tells us. So we have to get in here and talk about what does it mean? Object, intention, circumstance. Any defect of those in the act becomes a moral evil. And so nobody can say you need to submit to the sovereign pontiff or Vatican II or accept Vatican II. Your answer to that is, please explain what that means in terms of object, intention, and circumstances. And I'll gladly, then I'll be able to judge it with my conscience and consider, can I do that? Because I need to be able to tell, are you really commanding me something that's in your lane of activity? Is it have a good object, good intention, good circumstance? Is it in conformity with the faith? Remember, I said obedience has nothing to do with the faith. A faith comes from Christ through the church and the scripture, magisterium, and tradition. It doesn't change. Obedience has nothing whatsoever to do with faith. So if somebody's pointing a finger at you and saying, you need to obey, or else like you're outside the church because of some doctrine, like, no, that doesn't work. Under no way does the church command can the church teach a doctrine infallibly and hold people under obedience. It's like two totally different things, because again, obedience is under justice, giving a human superior his due, but the church is not a human superior. The church is the body of believers on earth with the power of the Holy Spirit to teach and guard the doctrine of the faith that was given by Christ to the apostles, and to govern that thing for the sound teaching of the truth and the distribution of the sacraments. Okay, so all that being said, back to your SSPX. Ask that question now.
So you're saying that the SSPX are not schismatic?
Well, okay, what is schism? Is those who refuse to submit to the Roman pontiff hold communion with those members of the church who acknowledge his supremacy. Well, the latter is certainly not true. What does it mean to submit to the sovereign pontiff? That is the $1 million question.
So, okay, so we're talking about blind obedience here. So, is it blindly obeying everything?
It can't be, because St. Thomas said that's not true.
Okay.
Blind obedience is not real obedience. It's a vice, actually.
So we ruled that out.
Yeah. So it must mean listening to what the Pope says and weighing it versus everything that the church has already taught, including the faith itself, which, remember, the faith has nothing to do with obedience. So is there something SSPX is going to say, wait a minute, the Pope doesn't have the power to command something brand new. We believe everything that the church has always taught, especially through Trent, Pascendi, Pius X, all those encyclicals and whatnot. So if there's something we're not, following along with when it comes to the faith, how's that possible? Because nothing new could be introduced. So we don't understand what's going on here. And what's the Pope asking us to do? It's not drink coffee. What does the Pope want of us?
Yeah.
No, what does the Pope want from SSPX? Is it accept Vatican II, whatever that means? Does it mean say the new mass or accept the new mass, whatever that means? I don't know at this point in time.
I don't know. And actually, what did John Paul II want from Lefebvre?
No, I think it was like don't consecrate a bishop.
Don't consecrate bishop?
I don't know. I honestly don't know what the fight was about, because with Paul VI, it was about accept Vatican II, accept the new mass and the new orientation and all that. And then he died. And then JP2 came in, and I don't know what the deal was then. I honestly don't know.
So I have
what's
a question.
The deal now? What's the deal now?
Yeah.
What do they want now? I don't know.
I don't know that they really want anything.
What's Pope Francis want with Traditionis Custodes?
Yeah.
Come back to the new mass, right?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. Well, there's a problem with that, in that the old mass, the new mass is new, and the old mass is the mass of the Council of Trent. The new mass is not the mass of Vatican II. The new mass is the mass of Bunini and the Deformers and the Protestant ministers. And it's a Lutheran communion service, but it's not. The new mass is not a Catholic service. The new mass is a Lutheran service. So the Pope is like outside of his jurisdiction there if he's saying you need to accept this Lutheran communion service. That's not part of the tradition of the church there. It didn't come from Trent. It didn't even come from Vatican II. So this is one of those deals that, again, like the Pope's commanding you basically to switch banks when he says you need to accept come back to the new mass, whatever that means. It's like, no, you can't command that, because it's not in your purview. It's a work of human hands, and it's not part of the Catholic tradition.
Or he's trying to ban one of the rites of the church.
Well, that's a sin against piety, tradition, maybe even the faith. It's also against Vatican II. Remember, Vatican II says that the church loves all the rites of Catholicism and treats them with respect. So the Pope can't go out there and say, oh, yeah, the old rites, the old mass is an old rite, and by the way, I'm going to ban it. No, again, that's not one of your powers, O Pope. Remember, the powers of the Pope is not to create new doctrines or to destroy things, but to protect what was handed down. So again, the Pope can't command obedience to give up or destroy the old mass. Now, some people who want to be the perfect obedience type, or what was the one that's the believing in the indiscreet obedience. So if you have perfect obedience types, they'll go along with and say the new mass, and they'll say, like, this smells, I'm going to hold my nose and say the new mass. And then there's the indiscreet obedience types who are going to set up a Pachamama, and they're going to go to the Synod on Synodality, and they're going to have altar girls and she deacons and all this stuff.
Well, we're going to the Synod on Synodality too, right?
Well, I don't know. Well, I'll think about it.
Maybe. I don't know. We'll see if all are welcome or not.
Yeah, we looked into that. I sent you an email, and you looked into what was going on in your diocese with the Synod on Synodality. But it might be, I don't know, it might be worth checking that out.
Problem is, it's hard to track this stuff whenever you're removed from the Novus Ordo world.
Yeah.
But I have a question. Do you have something to say? Because I had a question.
No, I'm done, and I was just going to start entertaining objections and questions now.
All right. Well, I have a question on differentiation of obedience between lay people and people like individuals in a religious order. So
Oh,
like
yeah.
if I join, say, the Jesuits,
Yeah.
um, that would I have would I have more obedience to my superiors than I do to my current bishop now? Because like if my superior in the Jesuits, this is hilarious because that's not even a remote possibility. But of me joining the Jesuits, that is. But if the Jesuit superior said, I command you under obedience to scrub the chapel floor with a toothbrush, would I be obliged to obey that?
Uh, I
I tend to think yes.
I believe object intentions. Here's the important thing: circumstances. What else is going on that day? Were you supposed to like go and baptize some indigenous Indian on the reservation
I'm not
who's
in the
on his
Jesuits.
deathbed?
Not in the Jesuits.
Well, I mean, let's
Maybe
pretend
from
here.
200 years ago.
Yeah, but I mean, there's
Yeah,
nothing wrong. Scrubbing the floor with a toothbrush, there's nothing wrong with it, but what's the circumstances?
it's a
See,
slow day.
in the vacuum, in the vacuum, it makes sense. But when you get into the concrete, you have to consider what else is going on. Why is he making me scrub this floor with a toothbrush? Um, is there like poisonous, anthrax particles all over the chapel floor? That's circumstances. Also, circumstances is I have pneumonia and I'm really really sick. Other circumstances is there's an indigenous native on his deathbed who wants baptism, and I'm the only guy around that can go do it. So all this stuff matters.
Yeah, okay. So it's not objectively sinful. Like, and that's the thing that, like, if my bishop told me to do that, this would be like, yeah, right.
Well,
You
here's
know,
another thing: is again, this goes back to stay within your lane. We lay people don't have any We never made any promise or vows of obedience to anybody. So, for instance, diocesan priests make a promise of obedience to their diocesan bishop and his successors when they're ordained. Religious make either a vow or some sort of promise of obedience to their religious superiors when they take vows. Um, when religious priests are ordained, this is really interesting. When a religious priest is ordained, he does not promise obedience to the diocesan bishop and his successors. He promises obedience to his religious superiors. So, for instance, we know some Benedictine monk priests, and none of them have any vowed obedience to the diocesan bishop. He's not their superior. Their superior is the abbot at the monastery, and so, they could really tell the bishop when he gives him a command, go pound salt. Now the bishop's going to say, like, you're not allowed to serve in my parishes anymore. And then the Benedictines would be like, oh, well, good luck getting priests to serve since you have none, buddy.
they'll be like,
And
all right,
then
see you later, and
they'll go back to the monastery and, enjoy themselves, eat
go
good
to a
food,
different
and
diocese.
oh yeah, or get transferred to a different diocese where they have a nice bishop rather than a clown bishop. Um, so yeah, lay people are only bound in obedience to a bishop when it comes to, or the pope, when it comes to things having to do with their purview. So, you know, like, what does that entail? I'd have to think more about that. I think canon law would be one of those things. For instance, canon law, which is man-made, says that um, you have to do Friday penance. But see, that's so old that's apostolic. Um, I would just have to think more about that. Um, I mean, something like an excommunication or an interdict on a person would be something that you would have to obey the bishop um, in general. Uh, But how do you
So
get that? Maybe if you're a heretic and you're publishing heretical materials, then as a layperson, he could tell you to stop, and you do have to listen because that's under his purview. He's protecting the faith.
so I have a question here. I see a good one, but Father Altman, his
Mhm.
situation, like, and I'm gonna make this like a general statement. So, like, a bishop will tell his priests not to talk about abortion, like right before the election season. That's not objectively sinful to not talk about abortion.
Mhm.
But then a Father Altman situation where his bishop probably told him, what did he say? Stop being divisive. Basically, don't talk about what he was
How do
talking about.
you please be more specific, Bishop? What do you mean by being divisive?
Yeah, I think he meant like stop talking about abortion. I guess that's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah,
Is
you
that
have to be specific. What does that mean, stop being divisive? Stop being mean. How am I being mean? Well, you're just mean. I want you to stop it. How do I do that? Just shut up. That's how you do it. Go away. Oh, okay. All right.
yeah? Well, that's basically what happened. But what you're saying is based on St. Thomas Aquinas. What he said is that Father Altman really wasn't out of line at all because he was preaching the truth.
It depends again. What's the object? Let's look at the case of. Say it again. Let's say the bishop told Father Altman, "Don't preach about abortion." Is that what your statement is?
Yeah, because we can sort of say that's what he did.
Okay, so let's say that object. If the bishop tells him, "Don't preach about abortion," does that mean ever or tomorrow or what? What's the answer?
I don't know
Me
because
neither. So
yeah, he
let's
didn't
say it's
specify
ever.
anything.
Let's say it's ever. Then the answer
Okay,
is no. I can't
yeah,
obey that because it's part of my job to teach the Catholic faith, and preaching against abortion is one of those things. So ever, no. Now let's say it's tomorrow. Tomorrow alone. Well, let's look at intention. Why? Let's look at circumstances. Is it the pro-life mass, the annual pro-life mass, and you want me to go in there and not preach about abortion? That's ridiculous too. So that's a no. And see, this is why to get in, you have to really understand all these circumstances and intentions before you can make a judgment on this. So when it comes to Father Altman, I have no idea whether what he's doing is justified or not justified because I don't know what Bishop Callahan told him or didn't tell him to do. I don't know. It's
apparently it wasn't.
impossible for me to judge. I can't.
Yeah. All right, we have a good question here from Mary
Yeah.
Ann. Was it correct to use obedience to the bishop as a justification for the priest not saying mass during the virus shutdown?
Okay, so this is
So
really interesting. Let's
it's
look
a
at
good
this.
question.
Was it the case that priests were not saying mass during COVID? From what
No.
is that the object? No, that is not true. What was going on was priests were saying mass, but it was in private. Now, so let's reframe it. Was it correct to use obedience for a bishop to command his priests not to say public mass during COVID? So the object is don't say public mass. Well, that can be a legitimate command. So if the priest is a naughty priest or whatever, he can be forbidden to say mass. Let's look at the intention. So what is the intention of the bishop? Is it to protect people from a deadly contagious virus? Is it to prevent the church from getting sued and losing money? Is it to do a favor for the governor or the mayor of the city? We don't know. So that's difficult to judge. So then what do? We look at circumstances, and that is okay. Uh, People are going to be without the sacraments, or maybe are people going to be sick? Is there really a super duper contagious virus there? Um, like I said, is anybody sick? Is it contagious? Why could we? Are we going to lose money? Is there a threat of the loss of money here? All this comes down to the
Yeah.
circumstances, and it's actually up to each priest. Then, if a priest comes to the conclusion that the circumstances don't dictate that he not say public mass, then in conscience he has to continue to say public mass because he judges it that the circumstances don't um, the circumstances don't avail themselves to the suppression of the public mass. So this comes down to the judgment of the priest there.
Yeah, that was an interesting question.
Also, the according to canon law, Kathy Carady, I believe her name is, she says that even according to the canon law, the bishops don't have this power. So that can be in there. Actually, that goes back to that would be in circumstances, see, or maybe it's the object, because let's say, is it Bishop X telling Father Y, don't say public mass during the virus? Or is it Bishop X telling all the priests don't say public mass? Because maybe he's telling Father Y, don't do it because you're undergoing cancer treatments and we don't want you out there exposed to anything. Again, that's a different object. So who is he? If it's different between one priest versus a whole diocese. I think, as what Kathy Carady says, when you're talking about the whole diocese making this blanket thing, then the object is bad. Because and the circumstances aren't it's bad circumstances too, because never in the history of the church has there ever been a blanket prohibition on anybody showing up to a mass, like in the whole country. Never.
Yeah, and like the bishop could, like you said, the bishop could have targeted high risk priests that are unhealthy,
or high risk people, and said like, no, you don't go to mass if you're over 65 and you're overweight, had diabetes or whatnot, stay home. But you can go ahead, it's okay if you go.
Just waiving the dispensation or waiving the obligation, dispensing the obligation probably would have been a prudent.
Yeah, you could have done that. Was totally fine. The bishop could have done a blanket. He could have done a blanket dispensation on people who had a health problem and were over a certain age, and he left that up to their conscience to decide whether it was or was not safe for them to attend Holy Mass.
Yeah, and I've talked about that quite a bit. So about what they could have done. If they didn't want people in a church, they could have done a lot of parking lot masses. And granted, every parish doesn't have a parking lot, but guess what? Some of them do.
Some of them do, and everybody can just go there.
Yeah, and then if you have like 500 cars in the parking lot, what's that going to do? Everyone has their windows closed, so what's the risk?
Again, that tells you the circumstances were so bad, and that's why I'm saying I think that every one of those dioceses was morally evil when they forbade. So actually, a lot of them did allow the parking lot mass. But I think the blanket shutdown of the indoor mass, that was evil. I'm not even going out on a limb saying the blanket shutdown of the indoor mass for everybody, for every priest in all circumstances, was evil.
I think so. Yeah, and then when they opened back up, you could see how bad it was because they took the holy water out of the fonts, and some of the places had like attendance limits, so.
And what was the intention of the taking of the holy water out? Because let's examine that as a moral act. Object, take holy water out. Well, that's neutral because maybe you have to replace the font and do repairs on, like the little font on the wall. Okay, so you have to take it away. Morally neutral. Intention, why? Well, they're going to say to protect people from what? A virus. It's not transmitted through touching water. You're not drinking the water. You're putting your finger in it and touching it to your body or whatever. And even if there is virus in there, does it get transmitted that way? This is also circumstances. None of that stuff makes that's not in conformity with reality. So that's error, and error is evil. So that was an evil decree as well, to do a blanket prohibition on that, evil. So no priest should have obeyed that thing either, because it's an evil command.
Yeah. Same with banning choirs. I mean, there was a study done in the Catholic Herald that said
it does nothing.
Singing doesn't spread any faster than talking.
So that was, again, bad circumstances and bad intention. Evil command. Priest should have disobeyed. It's not even disobey. See, it's an evil command. An evil command is not bound by obedience. So when you disobey, that's not even disobedience. It's a false command. So it's not disobedience.
Well, I would say that banning choirs in certain churches is actually a moral good. If you're singing the Novus Ordo
Well,
music,
yeah, I mean, if it's like all are welcome, if it's the
yes,
My Little Pony mass and the ballpark
yeah,
mass,
yeah.
then
Even the USCCB says all are doesn't say all are welcome. They said that song shouldn't be sung at mass.
yeah. So
So
there you go. That's intention and circumstances there.
yeah,
If you ban singing because if you ban the ballpark mass because it's horrible, then that's good intention, and the circumstances are good as well. So that's you have to comply. A priest has to comply with that one.
all right. Do you want to get to some of these
Yeah,
comments? I
go
know that
start going through all those comments and questions because there's a lot there.
there's a lot of comments about Brandon.
Resident
Um,
Brandon, our favorite.
let's see here. Obey the Pope when he brings Pachamama in.
Yes, bring in the
Yep.
Pachamamas.
Obey when the bishop brings in the Aztec god
Make sure you
gods.
have that feathered priest who puts the hex on you.
Here we go. Yeah, obey the Pope when he builds the.
Yes, Abu Dhabi Doo.
Yeah, obey.
Brandon is a good Catholic. Apostate Marxist. No,
All right, let's see. Let's scroll through some of these
not
here.
even Jill's husband.
All right. Oh, I'm not, Patty. That's a pretty funny comment. I chuckled when I saw it. I'm not even gonna post it. All right, let's see. So, okay, yeah.
Well, wait a minute there. There, Bergoglio has said one or two good things. Um, for instance, he suggested in the summer you go without. Sometimes you go without air conditioner. Uh, Now, let's look at object, intention, and circumstances here. Going without air conditioning is morally neutral. What's the intention? Is it to save Mother Earth, or is it to give you an
Yeah.
opportunity to be uncomfortable and do penance, like Carmelite uh, nuns and monks? They don't use air conditioning. Why do they do it? Because it's like that's a frivolous like necessity or a non-necessity. It's frivolous. It's creature comfort, a luxury. We're not doing that. Now, if Bergoglio says don't use air conditioning in order to save Mother Earth and Pachamama and stop global warming, well, then he kind of has a bad intention there.
Well,
So
he also declared this year the year of Saint Joseph. That was something I was thinking of, and I was like, that's very interesting because what does Saint Joseph stand for? Well, he stands for a father, like a
mhm.
true father, and we need fathers in this society, and like men who, live up to their obligation as a father. And what's the intention? Well, I'm not even going to speculate on that
Well, but
because
see, listen though, when he says that it's the year of Saint Joseph, there's no obedience there. Like that's
no,
actually an act of the magisterium. So there's nothing to obey. Yes, it's the year of Saint Joseph. Wonderful.
yeah,
So he's urging you to do prayers to Saint Joseph, consecrate your parishes to Saint Joseph's, and all that. Maybe he could even command that every parish does a consecration to Saint Joseph. Now that would be obedience upon the bishops and the priests, and the lay people
yeah.
wouldn't have to show up to that. But
Well, wouldn't be a bad thing
that
either.
would not be so. That object, intention, and circumstances could be good for that. But even at that, I think that comes into like the governance of the church. Would that be under the faith? No, because it's not like a dogma or a teaching, but it would be an act of a disciplinary action. So that would be binding upon the bishops and priests. And I
Well,
think that would if you follow the example of your parish priest, that could make you a better Catholic in that circumstance. So Bergoglio could be the cause of some people's sanctification through the whole year of Saint Joseph thing.
yeah. I mean, it's an interesting thought.
Yeah.
um,
Oh,
Yeah, I
he's talking
always like
about the
to.
meeting of
Yeah.
Brandon and Bergie.
Let's see here. Oh, Patty. And Patty's comments always crack me up.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah,
see.
basically Bergoglio is a Protestant. Obey traditionis custodes? No. You know, this is a good point here. I was talking with some friends today, and I said, when people start getting crazy with you making these demands, or saying you need to accept the new mass, or the new mass is just the same thing as the old mass, I said, don't try to get in there and quibble and make distinctions. Just say, no, no, that's completely false. And they're like, wait, didn't the church approve the new mass? You just say, no. How? But there's uh, Archbishop Bunini's signature and Paul VI's signature is in the front of that missal. And you're like, yeah, they did, but that's not the church. So no, the church didn't approve, the new mass and that kind of thing. So saying no to people it is a good way, because they're going to do the same thing to you, or they're going to argue or whatever. Just say no. Like in the President Reagan about drugs, say no to drugs. Say no to stupidity and heresy. Maybe we'll try that as we go through these comments if people have questions or whatever. We
You
need
need
another
another
Pope St. Pot.
advice.
Yes.
There you go. The outside his jurisdiction that takes nothing away from his skills. I don't know that there's a lot of bishops that are. Who's this referring to?
Yeah, I
I'm
don't
not
know who
sure.
that's referring to.
But I know a lot of bishops. They really
Brandon?
like. They really enjoy the golf links. That would be
Yeah.
out Patty's direction. I'm sure there's a lot of
Yeah,
good links
golf.
courses out there. They had the Open Championship a few years ago, right in Patty's neck of the woods. So okay, don't forget. Okay, so we're getting to these comments. What's this? I didn't see this.
Supich is saying the Roman Catechism is abolished. I would like to see that, because that's crazy talk. He's probably sour grapes because Schneider is promoting him. Show me where there's a magisterial decree that says the Roman Catechism is abolished. And actually, how could you do that? Because it teaches the faith. So is it the book that's abolished, or is it what teachings in it are abolished? Like the seven
Yeah.
sacraments, are they abolished? Supich has to be a lot more specific with what he means by that.
Well, and I don't know. Are they abolishing like the Baltimore Catechism or the Catechism of Trent or the
What's that?
modern
What do you mean?
Catechism?
What do they mean? What do you mean by abolished?
I don't know.
Nobody knows
Replace?
anything, because if you ask a question like that, they just say, you need to obey. That goes to tell you you're living in a dictatorship, in a Stalinistic regime, because there's no reason for anything. It's just
Oh,
submit and obey the commands.
oh, here's what Patty was saying.
Oh,
Baseball
I gotta
field.
look that up.
Well, whenever he was talking about the Satchel Paige, who I mentioned in the show with Brett, actually he was a very incredible baseball player. And, I'm a sports fan, and I definitely respect what he did at such a. What was he in his late 40s or something? Whenever he like dominated the league as a
Yeah,
pitcher,
because
and
he was in the Negro leagues, and then he came to the white. I get what we're
yeah,
gonna call them, the white leagues. I don't know. Later on,
well, that might get us censored. I don't know.
no, I just said the truth.
Yeah, I know.
Um,
Um,
but
no,
what
Captain.
does it? Why did Brandon say that to Bergoglio?
Um, I forget why. There was some reasoning
He's
behind
probably
it.
worried about that was code language for I need a new diaper.
I don't know. Maybe because yeah, there. I forget the context. I think it made sense kind of remotely
Okay.
whenever he said it, but like that was the thing because the news channels were canceled last second by the Vatican for the
Oh yeah, for
live
the
stream.
meeting. Yeah.
They were canceled last second, and the media people were all mad about it.
Yeah.
You're like, hey, come on, like, why didn't you just tell us in the first place?
Yeah.
So, what was this? Okay.
Ed Volantis says, "Get the jab or no sacraments for you. Obey." You know that obey that comes from They Live. In that movie with Roddy Piper, I believe there's signs all over the place, and when he puts on the glasses, all the signs say "Obey."
Oh, this is interesting. See, I haven't been paying attention too much to the news. I don't really care that much about it.
Yeah, Brandon's getting really whacked out. I mean, he's like totally lost his mind.
Yeah, it's
As
pretty
Eric
crazy.
Sammons, I believe it was Eric Sammons said, or maybe it was Ryan Grant or Mike from RTF, who is running the country? We don't actually know. I guess it's the military industrial complex because it's
Maybe.
not Brandon. He doesn't even know what day of the week it is. He's like, "What day is it? Is it Friday? Is that fish sticks? I love fish sticks. I have to. It's 6 o'clock. Have to watch Wapner and then Wheel of Fortune. Have to watch Wheel of Fortune." That's a reference to Rain Man. If you don't get the reference,
Actually, I think the Rain Man guy, the guy who inspired the video, came to my junior high school.
really?
Yeah, yeah. He was. I never watched the movie, but was that the guy that like remembered everything?
Yeah. Are you talking about the actor that portrayed Rain Man, or the
No,
actual,
no, like the Rain Man character in the video, like in the
the
movie.
real
He
guy?
the guy.
Yeah, that
But
his name is Kim Peek,
yep,
and he
yeah.
died a couple years ago. And he
Oh,
really
really?
did. Yeah, he really
Yeah,
did have a. He would like read the phone book and have it memorized. He was
yeah,
insane.
yeah. He came to my school when I was in junior high.
What did he
He,
do when he
he
was
just
at your
answered
school?
questions. So someone asked him to name all the presidents, all the presidents of the United States, and what years,
Wow,
and he listed them off.
man, that's impressive.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be super hard to calculate it out if you knew a lot about history, but we were like, whoa, because that was just because people were asking him like questions, and it was like, oh, cool, he knows a lot of trivia. But then it was like someone asked him that, and I was like, whoa. But
Yeah.
then I think he was like autistic,
Oh yeah.
um, and so there were questions that he didn't know because he hadn't read about that, or like if he couldn't make the connection, then he would say something else, like tell a story about something else. But he was a fascinating individual.
Yeah, I
And
watched the YouTube about Kim Peek. It's Peek. Kim, like Kimberly, but that's not his real name. It's just like Kim, as in Kim Jong Un. Maybe he was named after Kim Il Sung because he was like 50 or something when he died.
yeah, SJ,
Yeah, well,
yeah,
that's who's running Rome now. Is
shocker,
the FJ Parent Ryan, Parent Juan, Parent Sosa, the Parent Bergoglio.
right?
They're drinking tab and apple teenies and
I mean,
collecting all that German money.
see, I don't like to joke about this stuff because, like,
I don't know if
I,
that's true or not.
I don't like to. Well, I mean, it hasn't been denied. I like I don't see. I don't like to joke about this stuff because like people that lose their memory, it's actually very sad. Like I've had some
Yeah,
relatives, like some grandparents, they went through that, and it is actually very sad to see that the president is going through that type of situation, and his family must feel pretty badly that he is. But it's sad that people try to think he's running the country. He's not.
well, I had this discussion with a friend the other night about whether it was a big deal if Biden did go number 2 in his pants when he was with the Pope or not. And I mean, again, you have to look at object, intention, and circumstances. I mean, I'm assuming it was an involuntary action, so it's not even a human act. It's just a weakness. And, you
It's
know, who
it
knows if
is
it's true or not? Should he be
yeah
president? I don't know. Remember Bergoglio had a bowel surgery. So there was a rumor he
yeah
was hooked up to a colostomy bag. Not that there's
which
anything wrong with that, but
it's not funny either, because it's a
yeah,
medical situation that shows that his health is not very good.
yeah,
And I don't know, people. you can joke about certain things, but for me, those things really aren't that funny. But anyway,
I haven't
this
seen this video.
this
I
is
heard
really
about it.
interesting.
I think I actually saw it on YouTube, but I didn't click it.
So, Captain Catholic, if you know like the link, if you could comment this video, because we're reaching the end of our video segment here. But if you comment on like the regular comments of this video and post it, that would be very helpful. I can pin that if I get a chance to do that. Um, let's see. We're gonna cut off comments here pretty soon.
Yeah, go Trendy Web here at 817 makes a point. Biden is pitiable, but he was pro baby killing before he went senile. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean, so
like,
I'm okay with making fun of Joe Biden for being a buffoon, falling down steps.
yeah.
Let's go, Brandon, and all this stuff. Being
Well, that wasn't even him.
Jill's husband, I know, but it's become a slogan.
Yeah,
Jill's
yeah,
husband, he doesn't know who he is. Even the accidental number twos in the pants, I'm okay with that. But really, that's all for fun. I mean, the big problem with Biden is the baby killing. He did an LMNO. The dude did an LMNOP marriage
yeah.
as a JP. He should be excommunicated for doing an LMNOP marriage. That's all. It's against the natural law. So that he should not be receiving communion based on that alone. Even of course with all the abortion stuff.
That's actually a
Um,
really good point because a lot of people lose that in the context of everything.
they do. Nobody wants to talk about this. How many Catholic justices? How many Catholic JPs are there doing LMNOP marriages? Tons. And how many Catholic judges are there doing divorces? Tons. And I think divorces, I don't know if that's against the natural law or not.
Is it divorce and remarriage?
Well,
Because like a civil,
okay, that is against the natural law.
because
Well,
I think the
no, wait,
civil divorce.
that's against the church.
Because I heard I think it was it Eric Sammons who talked about this, who interviewed someone. It always goes back to Eric Sammons because his channel is so good.
His channel's so based. Like if you watch his show today about secession, it's something. This is like that show is the topics that John and I and some of these other people that we hang out with after Latin Mass on Sundays, we talk about that stuff. Eric Sammons is not afraid to offend normies and like people who are all about Trump and Republicans and Democrat two-party politics, basically. Eric Sammons is not only red pilled, he's like black pilled on a lot of this stuff. Um,
Yeah,
he's really, and he's so like he seems like he is such a normal guy. He's like me or you or the guy down the street or whatever. But boy, he is really on the ball when it comes to politics, the traditionalist question, the Pope, all this stuff. I mean, he's up there with Quaz and Ryan Grant in terms of his level of red pilled baseness.
yeah. I mean, basically, like a lot of the videos that he releases, I'm like, oh, this is a cool topic. Like, it's
Yeah.
just, it's so good. I don't know. I don't know what else to say. But
Well, we
he's
should have him on the show. He'd be a big get. I
yeah,
know he's only got 3,000 subscribers over at Crisis Magazine. I
yeah.
believe
Give him
that's
some
the channel.
publicity on this channel, right?
Yeah, we'd get subscribers. He'd get subscribers because
Yeah,
he would be welcome on this show because he's got a lot of opinions like we have.
yeah, for sure. Now he said in the video he did on divorce, I believe that he said that civil divorce isn't actually like a divorce in the church, and so you can get a civil divorce and you wouldn't be in a state of sin. I think that's what he said. So,
Yeah, but the problem though is the marriage. I mean, a JP who is a Catholic can't even marry two Catholics. That's a canonical crime. He can't do that. He should be suspended. He should be like under interdict or excommunicated or something for doing that. You can't do that. You're participating in a charade.
yeah,
You don't have the authority
yeah,
to marry two Catholics. They're bound by the church, and so are you.
yeah. That might be another topic. I don't know. Do you have any closing thoughts, Ryan?
No, I didn't think we were going to be able to finish up, like, talk for any more than 20 minutes about solo obediencia, but
Well, you know
we
how these
covered quite a
things.
bit. I hope
Uh,
people, we'll probably get some trolls or some solo obediencia types, Catholic Answers types, some Where Peter Is types. They'll probably see this video.
well,
I hope they do. Write down some objections, and then we'll do another show at another time.
yeah, really. If you object to anything, post a comment and we'll address it.
Let's hear it. I was talking to some guys today, and they were saying they fall back on, look, the new mass is a product of the church and the Pope, and you have to obey that thing, and that's what they fall back on. And again, I just say no, it's not. And then they're like, wait a minute, are you denying that John Paul II is the Pope? No, I'm not
No.
denying that. But he made this mass, okay. But then but it's a product of the church. No. Uh so there you go.
Oh, here we go.
Please start
Please start.
over.
All right.
Well,
Well, we'll be here.
Ryan, you'll just
Let's
have
see
to hit
here.
rewind. Leave a comment, and I'll have John. I'll have John give a response. Whatever. I should probably create a YouTube account on my own so I can like comment to people. And I don't know if
Respond to comments.
yeah, John, if I set up my own channel, is that the sin of schism? Would it be disobedience to you if I set up my own channel?
Only if it costs me some ad revenue. You might have to repay me like those few cents a month that I'd miss out on.
Okay. Oh, their captain says no, it's always on Novus Ordo watch.
Oh, okay. Here we go. So this will be interesting. Original video on EWT and YouTube. Whoa! All right.
Yeah.
Now I gotta go check it out.
Where the smoke, the
All right.
snake's smoky snake enters into Bergoglio.
Interesting. Well, that's interesting. All right. Well, that's the show. So, everyone, thank you so much for watching. We are the laity.
And we will not be silent.